Welcome to episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about pretty dresses. And I love pretty dresses, I love florals, I love prints, I love cotton prints. There are so many to choose from in this world. This is a great print, and I actually used the selvage because I thought it was so pretty as trim on the dress. And this dress is called the Ripple. So it's a longer dress, and it's really fun. And I wanted to share the dress made up in a rayon. So it's the same dress, it's just completely different because the rayon is so slippery and sweet and drapey. And I did a completely different detail in the front. One is pin tucked and the other is ruffled. So this is one of the dresses we're going to be making. This is a lovely piece. It is called the Harriet. And the Harriet has this lovely drawstring detail in the front, and then it's got ties that come out of the side seams, and you tie it up on the sides. You don't have to do the drawstring, and it's got a really great neckline. It's a little deep, so I share in the pattern how to make it so it's not so deep, and a few other options. I love the Harriet in a print, and I did the facing in a different fabric. There are so many options. I also did a crazy cuff, which I really love, and a placket. So we'll be going through that. And then just two makes that I'll share. And these are two new patterns called the Panola and the Wanda. And they're just two really sweet little dresses. And we'll go over a little bit of their details in the video. So, yeah. Oh, I also wanted to just quickly share with you, and we won't be talking about it in this video because we did it before. This is the Wanda, and the Wanda is made in different fabrics. We have shown it in a solid, but this is in the cottons, and you see the panels. So this pattern has recently been released, and I hope you love it. Another pretty addition to add to your wardrobe. So let's get started. The Harriet is a great dress, and it's very easy to make. So we have the back, and I'm cutting this up to form a stand-up collar. It's not very large when it's on. It's got a deep shoulder, not a huge armhole, and an A-line shape. The front is cut on the fold, but then we cut into the front and we created this. So it's cut quite low there. You can see in this one here, I've got a piece underneath it. But you don't have to cut it that low. So if you wanted it to be here, you just follow the pattern, and so you can have a higher neckline. Same shoulder, armhole, and side seams. We're going to mark where the ties go. They are optional, but they're fabulous in that they cinch the dress in just at the right place. It's really fun. Fun. The sleeve is a little wider at the cuff because we're going to do some ruffling there, and it's got a placket. The placket goes on the back side of the sleeve here. And I cut some contrast fabric that totally doesn't go, which is my vibe. You don't have to do that. This will be the binding for the placket. I have cut some narrow pieces in the contrast fabric, and I'm going to pin them onto my placket. We're going to do that first. And then the second thing we're going to do is, I could have just left the pockets plain. There are 4 pocket pieces. And on 2 of them, I created just a little visual, because this is going to match the tie. So I folded the linen in half, pressed it, and then just placed the raw edges onto the pocket, and then I trimmed the binding to the pocket. Same on this one, just for a little detail. So that's going to sit on the back side of your pocket, and then your hand will go in there, but it just adds this little detail inside the pocket. You don't have to do that and keep them plain. We all love a pocket. So we do that, and then I have cuffs. I did cut the facing, and you don't have to do a contrast fabric. I love it. So this is the back, and this is my front. I cut it exactly the same. There is a pattern piece for this, and it matches the front opening. So the first thing here, for the facing preparation, we're going to place these right sides together on the shoulders, and then this goes, you're going to stitch from the side, not across the top, the side downward, which is the collar piece, and then the shoulder. So we did a few pieces. We did the pockets, like I showed you. Here we did the shoulder seams of the facing, the collar, and the neck, the shoulder. And then we just serged around the edges. But you can finish it by folding it under and stitching it down. So we have the sleeves, of course, and we have a straight cuff in the pattern piece, but I also give you the option of doing this curved piece. What we're going to do with our cuffs, these are cut on the fold. We're going to stitch the sides together so that we can flip them. You can put interfacing inside of these to make them a little stiffer, but I like it soft, so I don't. While my assistant is stitching the cuffs together, I am going to make the pleats for the sleeve. I did the placket and I stitched it on, so I folded the binding in half, right sides outward, pressed it, and then I placed it on the wrong side of the fabric of the sleeve, and I stitched, and I also cut into the placket. So if this is our placket, so I've cut into, that's our placket, right? And then I cut a little upside down arrow, just little 1/4 inch snips. So I think you might see that there. And then when you pull it open, it's going to lay flat. But what you're going to do, I hope you can see this, is just pin these pieces down so that they stay put. Something like that. But you can see we've got this flat. And then just use a 1/4 inch stitch and lay your binding on it and wrong side, so that when you press it and when you flip the binding to the right side, you can, I just go past the first line of stitching and I stitch it down, and it gives you a professional look because you are seeing this stitch. So if you were stitching it the other way around, we're sewing by hand, sometimes we would miss the back side of the binding or it won't lay straight. So in this case, you can see what you're actually doing and what's going to be seen on the garment. You can either ruffle up the sleeve on both sides of the placket, and it's going to match, or you can pleat them. In this case, I'm going to do some pleating. My pins are not liking this fabric. So we want, and you know me, I just put them wherever I feel like. But you can be very even and put your pleats where you want them. In my case, and then I adjust when I have my cuff ready to go. And so now we turn these right sides. The corners are nice and pointy. Now that I have my cuffs ready to go, and these openings are going to sit on the placket, and this size, this should match this size, which it will do. We're going to baste the pleats in place, but before that, we've got some work to do. We're going to do work on the dress and like we did the facings, we're going to sew the shoulders together and then upward on the neck for the collar. Before we do the shoulders and the collar and facing, what I meant to do is do the pockets. So we're going to put the pockets in place. So I've usually marked them on the pattern piece, or I like to measure them on my body because everybody's arms are different lengths. You don't want your pockets down by your hips or up by your boobs. That wouldn't be good. Like this. So right now I'm just pinning the dress together so that I can have a perfect match on my side seams. I'm also going to fold it this way so I have all the seams together. So I am going to neck where my pocket is going to go on the pattern piece, and that's comfortable for my arm. So I'm just going to nick my fabric 1/4 inch. I'm going to make a notch. On the back side, the back panel, we're going to put our decorative pockets in place. This is the back panel, and when it's done, it'll go into the pocket, but you can see what I mean. This is a front piece, and I'm going to do the regular pocket. You can do this decorative piece on both sides of the pocket. It would look very nice. Now we have the pockets on, and so you press the pockets outward, seam allowance outward, so that it's upward from the dress panel. And I just pin those strips down. And you can either top stitch them down to keep them laying flat, which is a good idea. I'm going to leave them as they are. Okay, and pockets are done. So now we're going to do, here's my front panel and the back panel, and you know what goes next. We're going to do the shoulder seams. I'm going to pin the collar, stand up piece, and then the shoulder. And another thing to do when you stitch that, because you're pivoting at that corner, just do a little clip into that corner when you turn it and press it, so that it doesn't pull. Now that our shoulders are stitched, you can see the dress starting to take shape. It's very nice. Got a very nice got a very nice shape to it. Now, I also want to show that at this point, you can leave the sleeves off. You can bind the armholes or hem the armholes, and you could also omit the ties. So it's got this lovely flavor to it. But we're going all the way. So the next thing, before we have the weight of the sleeves on and all of that, what I want to do is put our facing on. The facing, you're going to put right sides together, put this over your dress. We've done this many times in my patterns. And match the collars and the edges all the way around. Yes. So I've pinned the facing on, and I've matched the edges. I know some of you are thinking, why is she using that fabric? And some of you are thinking, I love it. But you can obviously do your facing in the same fabric. You could do it in a solid. Here we did it in the same fabric. So we're going to stitch that on. I've got it right sides together, stitch it on. Then we're going to flip it on the inside and stitch that facing down. It's easy peasy, and then you've got this like collar piece. When you stitch the collar piece in here, you're going to snip that corner before you turn. Then we will add our sleeves. And you remember I did the little pleating. The sleeve is the same front to the back. And we're going to put that sleeve in place, center the shoulder onto the shoulder seam, and then fit it into the sleeve. The reason this armhole is slightly smaller than normal is because we have a longer shoulder. So our shoulder will hit here and our armpit will be here. So our arm gets a little thinner here. So it can be a little bit smaller than a normal shoulder sleeve. And I usually like big sleeves, but in the case of this, I like the slimmer sleeve up here, even though it's full down here, to balance the dress. This is a wide dress. When you cinch it in, it's going, it's fantastic. And then it's got this narrow sleeve up here and a little bit of a puff. I stitched the facing on, and it looks great. So now I'm going to just clip in each corner. I'm going to cut off some of the corners so they turn nicely, especially at the notch of the collar. And when you stitch the V, what I would do is use a pencil and mark your seam allowance so that you come to a perfect V, because you're stitching beyond that V. You're not stitching around it, you're stitching a V. And that is helpful. So I'm just going to trim into my V. So I have my facing on. I pinned it well. The best way to do this, I think, if you're a beginner, baste it in place. Just hand stitch big stitches, the facing down inside. Once you've sewn it on, and you've clipped into your corners, which I mean that, clip these, clip into the V, and you'll see that this flips around, it's part of the collar, and it's really lovely. We finished the edges of the facing, and I love the neckline. And again, you don't have to do so deep because you'd have to wear something underneath, and Another thought would be to do buttonholes on either side and do a lace. And you could lace it up a little bit. You could, it won't lay quite right, but you could do a hook and eye here. But it's really lovely. And the other thought is when you cut it out, you could cut this across. So cut out your notch, and instead of doing the V, cut right across. That would look awesome as well. The next step is we're not going to put the sleeves on right away because we're going to put our drawstring across the front of our dress. And before I did do the drawstring channel, I made 2 buttonholes on the front of the dress, which are here and here. And the buttonholes I cut so that when I flip it around to the wrong side, you're going to put the drawstring channel on the wrong side of the dress or the inside of the dress. I used a long ruler and it's just above the pocket, and it should just touch the stitching of your facing. Here's I chose a fabric that's not going to be seen and it's very light. So I used a voile and I pressed in each side to create my channel. And I'm going to line it up with those buttonholes and that line. And then I'm going to pin it down in a straight line. You don't have to do the drawstring, but it's a really lovely detail to cinch in this dress and create a little bit of a waist. And then when you stitch it on, you're going to stitch it on both edges all the way across. I put my drawstring in. I sewed it down on the inside. You see it? And I thread one of my ties through the center. You're going to make 2 ties, and you're going to cut one of them in half because we're going to add these into the side seams of the garment so that they can tie with this centerpiece. And this one goes right through the buttonholes in the center of the dress. And I would leave it not ruched up just yet, but to give you an idea, it's really lovely. Fun dress. Okay, so before I do anything else, I'm going to put the sleeves on. So we want our plackets to be on the back side of the garment. So this is my back side, this is my front side, and I'm find that center point of my sleeve, and I'm going to pin it down, and then I'm going to continue pinning my sleeve into the armhole on both sides. Then I'm going to stitch those on, and then we're going to do the side seams and stitch around the pockets and down to the hem. Really is a great dress. It's great in the solid behind me. Such a lovely garment. It's very feminine on, and I wanted to share in the fun print which we're making today. Okay, so we have our sleeves in, and we're going to stitch away. So my drawstring is in the middle, and then when I sewed the side seams, I added the smaller ties into the sides, to the side seam. So the first tie is a full tie, the second tie I cut in half, and I added it into the side seam. So now I can tie it. And you can cinch in the center as much as you want or as loose as you want. But it adds for a nice detail on the side of the dress. as well as the little gathers in the front. Again, you don't have to do the deep neckline. I also did not top stitch the neckline down because when you stitch the facing down like this, it keeps it in place. I added the sleeves with my placket at the back, and then I did the side seams and around the pocket. And that pocket detail is right here. So it's enough that it's just there, but it looks really nice. I did not stitch this down, so it could flap over it, just as a little bit of a detail. And if you wash this dress and gave it a little bit of a crinkly look, that would actually appear. I added the cuff, and the cuff was easy to do. There it is, right onto the placket. And because it's got this curved edge to it, it gives this cuff a little bit of structure. And then you can wear it flipped back. You can add a button. You can keep it loose. Or you could do a hook and eye. And the way I stitched it on, so here's my cuff. I'd sewn the side edges together and flipped it. And I open it up at the seam. And I'm going to pin that, again on the wrong side. So on the inside, I'm going to pin that seam line right along the edge of my placket. So you're pinning just one side on. Now, if your pleats don't match the width of your cuff, you can just adjust by loosening or creating a little pleat in there to force it to fit. And because this is a curved edge, there's a little bit of easing involved. So now I'm going to stitch that down, and then I'm going to bring this over and just fold this under and cover the stitches and then top stitch it down. So it's pretty easy to do. So both cuffs are on and it's tied. You can have it a little tighter. That's a great piece. And it's amazing how different it looks to the solid. Very cool. On this one I added a little detail at the back there. But so that is our lovely Harriet. Our next dress is the ripple. And I call it the ripple because it's got this lovely ripply effect on the front and the back. We can do these pleats in a couple of different ways. These are pleats, but we can also just gather around the neckline. It's a straighter cut, longer dress. You don't have to make it as long. And it's got a nice satin sleeve, narrow shoulder, and full at the bottom. This is the longest sleeve. In the example, we're going to do a little bit of a shorter sleeve. And this is done in a quilting cotton. And for kicks, I add a little raw edges here around the neckline. And I even used a bit of the selvage as trim because I thought it was really pretty. And the back. It has pockets. It's just a lovely dress, the little sandal or a boot, and it's also great for summer lunches, if you're going to a shower or something like that. Grocery store, running errands, nice and cool. And for colder weather, it could be made in a little bit of a heavier fabric, heavier cotton. And I am going to show it to you in a rayon. So we're going to make it so it has a little bit of a different look. And this is the front, same dress, but I ran a little ruffle around the neckline, and I'm not going to stitch in here because I felt that the fabric, this is fun because I can stitch down and you really can't see the stitches. These are like tuck pleats, whereas these are just a ruffle. I also like the way this drapes. This is a nice soft dress. Very simple to make. All we're going to do is add the front and the back. I did the ruffling at the back. And rayon is easy to stitch with. It's just a little bit more slippery than the cotton. And we're going to match our shoulder seams and stitch them together, and then we're going to add the sleeves. The sleeves, actually before the sleeves, we're going to finish the neckline, but the next step would be to add the sleeves. And I've cut these a little shorter. Let's see here, about 3 inches shorter. And I did my gathering at the top of the sleeve. I did ruffles here as well. You could also do the tuck pleats on the sleeve here. So lots of options. And then that will be inset into the armhole. I've also chosen something solid to break up the print. I think it's a nice modern florally print. And we're going to add this to the neckline. It's a binding. This is actually linen. I like the difference between the linen as a solid kind of non-stretchy fabric to the little bit of the stretch in the rayon. I stitched my binding on once I'd done the shoulder seams. And this time I stitched on the right side of the fabric. And I wanted a clean line. Because we've got these pleats, I didn't want the raw edge, and I also didn't want the stitch mark of the binding. So how I did this was I folded my binding in half, like so. And then you're going to put it on the right side of your fabric and stitch it on. I would not use a serger, I would just use a good 1/4 inch. And also to cover those stitches unless you basted them for the ruffles. You stitch it on, and then I'm going to press it upward and into the garment. So it rolls into the garment, and so. And then I hand stitched it down. And I know a lot of patterns, I don't do a lot of hand stitching, but when it's something special and you want it to look professionally done, and also it just adds a little bit of class with no stitch line there. Just gives it a sense of elegance. So then I did my side seam, added my sleeves, and then I did my side seams. In this case, I did not add the pockets, but as we usually do, it has side pockets in the pattern. So now I have my binding, and again, I'm going to stitch it on. You can join the ends and make sure it fits. Oops, raw edge to raw edge. I'm going to pin that in place all the way around my sleeve. Then I'm going to stitch it on using a 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to fold it to the wrong side and hand stitch it down. So I did the same with the sleeves, and it's looking pretty sweet. I just have to hand sew that other piece, and there you have it. And the bottom I'm going to do the same pink. So very simple dress, but very elegant on. You could also do a tie belt. You could do it under the bust. You could do it in your waist. That's a very pretty dress. So that is the ripple. I wanted to show this piece, Panola, and it's a very similar cut to it's a high-waisted piece. It's a very similar cut in the front as our peplum jacket, where it's got a curved bust line here and here. It's got a placket, which I stitched on, and if I open this, follow the directions for this placket, which is really cute. I sewed 2 pieces back to back, right sides facing, and then, but I stitched to a certain line, and then I stopped stitching, and then I stitched a little bit more, then I stopped stitching and stitched a little bit more, and it created these button loops. Then I pressed it open and just tucked in the ends, stitched it down, and stitched this side onto one side of the dress, and added the buttons on the other side. So it's a really lovely technique, and I hope you use it. It gives it a nice finish. It's very subtle. I'd like to see this in a solid as well, but very pretty. It's got a little bit of a waistline and ruffles in the skirt, very simple. This is very prairie looking. We added a little detail in the sleeve, bound the sleeves, bound the neckline on the inside, and then I added the lace onto a panel for the bottom edge. And here's an example of mixing very pretty prints together. I picked out the blue in the blue of the flowers, and it looks really cute on. This is a really sweet dress. And the way to wear these dresses, you know, this could be very frumpy on, but you put a pair of jeans on it, or a pair of your normal jeans, or a pair of the Oprah pants in maybe a blue or a white, and you have a really darling layered look. So that is the Panola. Put a little piece of lace here as well on each sleeve. And then the last dress I wanted to show you is Wanda. And Wanda's pretty straightforward, a little bit more fitted, simple back. Added a piece here for interest. You could add a belt onto this, and then it's got a crossover front, and you stitch the binding on. I also stitched rickrack, added a little flavor. I added rickrack on the sleeve, just one sleeve. It's got a narrow sleeve, which you can bunch up on your elbow, and I also added this pleat just in the middle of the skirt, where you just stitch all the way around, and I stitched a piece of lace there, so it hangs down. You could also do a few pleats like that in different places, so that you can make your skirt more bunched up, like so. But this is a very simple pattern to follow, and I hope you enjoy making that one too. So we have 4 really lovely pieces for you to make up as pretty solutions to your need for romantic, fun dresses. And I'm really excited about this one as well. Again, with a pair of jeans, a narrow pant. Could wear a big baggy pant underneath. I could wear a Mary pant under here. But this is a really darling piece. And of course, it would require a slip, or you make it without. So I hope you've enjoyed episode 3 of this workshop. And I look forward to making jumpers in the next episode. I'll see you later.